Lights are needed.
Say the mic wasn't working.
No, he unmuted.
Unmuting.
But it's your time to shine.
One minute mark.
Do a sound check for Councillor Steer. Councillor Steer, can you hear us?
I certainly can. It looks a bit lonely in there today.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we run into the washroom every 5 minutes.
I'll be back in a second. Hang on.
Okay, it's 4:30. Just before I call the meeting to order, I just have something to say, and I'd like to express on behalf of council and the District of Tofino our sympathies and condolences to the families and friends of the recent tragedy in Vancouver. Tofino joins with many municipalities in mourning the loss of so many people and grieving for them. I would like to take 1 minute of silence as we think about that tragedy. Thank you. I'll now call the meeting to order. And I'll acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. We have a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. Registered participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. And moving on, we have approval of the meeting location, and I'll move from the chair that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229, 2016, as amended, the April 28th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcast on the Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at the Clayoquot Sound Theatre, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. And if there's no objections, that will be carried by unanimous consent. Seeing none, that is carried. And I'll also move from the chair the adoption of the agenda. So I move that the April 28th, 2025 Committee of the Whole agenda be adopted again by, I'll look for unanimous consent on that. And that is carried. And I'll also move the minutes, adoption of the minutes of last Committee of the Whole. And so I'll move from the chair that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held December 16th, 2024 be adopted. And for unanimous consent on that. Seeing no objections, that is carried. Public comment on agenda items. Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I'll now do a open call for comments. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. And if there's anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I will now do a call. Calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. There are no current comments at this time, Chair Anderson.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to item 6.1, Clayoquot Heritage Society delegation. And this is regarding museum activity to support our funding application. Have Chris Reeks with us. And Steve Bernard. Welcome, gentlemen.
Rigged up with all our buttons. Good afternoon, acting mayor and council. Good to see you guys again. 3 years since I've been here. So I'd like to, we can get going. This is enriching visitor experience and preserving history. And I'd like to introduce Chris Reeds. He's our new museum manager. He's a lot of experience in documentary filmmaking and stuff like that. He came on in September and a local resident, likes to live and all that. So Chris is a welcome addition for us to sort of scale up. Okay, next slide. Well, a little bit about the history of this. 2003, rod anchor, iron anchor came up associated with the ship Tonquin. We had to basically build a museum around it to keep it in the local community. We went to Tofino Clayoquot Heritage Museum, which is a general interest museum from the old Tonquin Foundation, 2016. And 21 to 24, we've been in the Legion and pretty much open year round. As far as the history goes, what we've been dealing with for the last couple of years is 4 managers in 4 years, and finding bookkeepers and things like that, and having problems with staff and stuff. We have dedicated staff accommodation. So the way these nonprofits work is they, incremental approach, many years, they go up and down and up and down. So we're on a wave right now. We're accelerating to Museum 3.0, and hopefully this is all good news. Difficult day. So next slide. Well, we're a registered charity. Our narrow purpose under CRA is as an educational facility, and we have to present a variety of views. We can't just do one thing or whatever. And registered society, we got 6 directors right now. Maureen Fraser, Barb Campbell, Doug Banks, Moses Martin is still on there, Charles McDermott, and myself. 1 full-time manager. We still got linkages with post-secondary institutions for employing museum students. Okay, next slide. The mandate, narrow mandate, is a museum. It's a museum function built on public trust, like easy things like you guys all deal with. And so we're basically maintaining, displaying, preserving, and protecting artifacts, and our area is sort of at the Tofino Clayoquot Sound area. If we ever, this is just a note, if we ever decommissioned it, the assets would go to a qualified donee. Directors are all volunteer, I'm volunteer, and all of that. So next slide. Stakeholders. Visitors, locals, business community, District of Tofino, First Nations, heritage community. Because this is an RMI thing, this is sort of scaled towards RMI, right? Which is visitor experience, which the great part of this dual purpose is that we make the visitors happy. We're also preserving local heritage and history stuff that would otherwise be lost through the sands of time. We don't get older. Okay, next slide. And now for the current stuff, you've heard me throw boring things. This is Chris. I'll turn it over to him and he can give you an idea what's going on.
Yeah, well, 2004 was a landmark year for us. So we saw a 50.7% increase in visitation. So which means the number is 4,500 roughly in comparison to 3,023. Donations jumped by 81%. So we are close to at the door with 30,000 a year in comparison to 50,492 and 57 and 23. Yeah, we launched a couple of new exhibitions. We expanded our speaker series, which we held in the Legion. We hosted walking tours, launched a brand new website, and introduced our new our merchandise. Website also with a digital archive. It's including a digital archive, which we built up, right? And all of which helped us better serve both visitors and locals alike. Our current activities, so just to have an idea about our daily work, that includes creating new displays, running public events, managing and digitizing collections, and building partnerships. For instance, we just had last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we had a partnership with the Off the Lip Surf Contest. It's a Canadian surf circuit. And we had a pop-up mobile museum tent and displayed our history of surfing, riding the wave exhibition, and sold merch. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. We think while many tourists, they come to Tofino, obviously for its natural beauty, the museum, we provide the historical context that deepens that experience. So we offer them a place to pause, reflect, and connect with the stories of Tofino and the whole Clayoquot area. You probably won't find these stories which we display. You won't find it in guidebooks and everything because many exhibits are locally sourced and community driven. So this is really important for us. And tourists experience the region, not just as observers. When they are here and they connect, they are part of the community. We're just temporary, but they are part of the community. So we try to create a welcoming and accessible space. Yeah, we think that our museum adds real value to the tourism experience and it encourages longer stays, repeat visits, and we do our part for a meaningful engagement with our history. Yeah, we have friendly staff, so we are, open-minded, friendly staff, and our historical elements make it accessible for all ages and backgrounds. So it's, And then when it comes to knowledge transfer, which is a big part for sure, we offer a window into local life. So I think if you want to understand, the present, what's happening nowadays, you got to take a look at the past and learn about the past, so you will find some answers. And yeah, we are committed to share this knowledge in different ways. Curated exhibits, digital media, guided tours, and school visits. We have in May, we have 30 students, a group of 30 students from Quebec coming over. And we offer, like a tour in the museum and a historic walking tour to get an idea and then offer this kind of experience. We're open 7 days a week, ensuring that learning never stops, rain or shine. Our future goals. So we're looking ahead with ambition. I want to keep up with new exhibitions for sure. Expanding educational programs, digitize more of our collection, and improving our interactivity. We were in the lucky position recently to purchase and acquire a new audiovisual equipment, which means we can develop way more digital content for social media channels and for our website, and doing interviews, and which is a big step for us.
So I'll jump in now about the numbers here. So we call this one level 3, and like I said, we're on an upswing. 3 years ago, when I presented with Trish, who was a good manager at the time, but she had to move on, wasn't with us, but the budget was around 100,000. We were looking for 33% of it, which was 30 grand. So this level 3s, we've increased it. Now some of our costs have gone up. So we're looking at a projected revenue of 230,000, expenses of 230. We're respectively asking for 50,000 per annum. That's slightly less than 33% of the total budget. So the dollars have come up, but your fractional amount has gone down, which shows that their leveraging has increased. Which, when you think about this thing, all these things are this organizational stuff with, it's not a business, but it's certainly got economics and finance and everything else. We figure we can raise 40,000 for business individuals, visitation and merch. We have a little store, 45, and then grants at 95, a total of 230,000. Really, what this allows us to do is to scale it up and go back to what we are, is we're preserving history. We're getting stuff recorded that otherwise would dissipate to, into the sands of time. We've done 6 displays on local history of Vargas Island, Stubbs Island, the McQuina Hotel, a decolonization project on First Contact, which is in consultation phase right now with First Nations and other stakeholders. So these mobile displays are pretty cool, and we can move them around. So we're doing that. We're going to be doing the airport, Fort Defiance, and something else in the fall. I can't remember. Mining. But we could also do something like the history of the Tofino Fire Department or stuff like that. You can capture, work with them, put stuff in, and get that. Even the history of the water system, right? Which we've all been around. It's got quite a history, right? Something like that, educational, well-written, professional. That's what we're trying to do here on the ground. And then linking with Tourism Tofino, we're going to have a pod in there that directs people to us. The great thing about it, business and sport, just by more use, coming to see us, right? And that increases things for everybody. So a good visitor experience, walking tours, and what the like is. I don't know if there's anything else I forgot to mention. And we're done. Any questions?
Okay. Turn to committee members if there's any questions first. I'm sorry.
I'll just ask through the chair for anyone who's listening for Zoom or in the room, what are your guys' hours 7 days a week?
So we are open 10 to 4, but usually it's somebody's there from 8:30.
Further questions? Councillor Steer, I can't see you on the screen if you have your hand raised or not. Speak up, I guess.
Thank you. And maybe I don't have a direct question, but thanks, Steve and Chris. I appreciate this a lot. And one of the things that stands out, and you had talked, Steve, a couple of the things that in terms of those presentations that might come into the future. And I think water history is a really good one. Speaking with your father, who was very instrumental in those installation of our water history, I think it's a very valuable piece of that information, and one that I'm going to plug our local government. There's a long history of local governance within the District of Tofino, and I think it would be another wonderful presentation. Maybe I'm biased on that one. And I do think there's a lot of value in the, as you talked about, in terms of the educational process, visitor and locals alike, and really want to encourage that educational component, especially with our local schools, high school and public school, our elementary school, I think is incredibly important. And I did note and I'm looking at the agenda, and one of the things that I think the society is coming and looking for is support for the RMI funding application. And what would that support look like? I'm not sure if it's a letter of support or if there's other or something else that we can do to help support.
Well, we've been funded through RMI for almost a decade on a multi-year agreement. And so our current funding 3-year agreement is up this year, and it was $30,000 a year. So this was something that we sort of came up with a decade ago to cement the concept of a museum function, but putting it underneath the visitor framework. And so what we're doing is asking for an RMI agreement for 3 years. And that allows us some continuity in fundraising, so revenue source, so we can. Now that's an increase, I agree with it, but our displays have increased in professionalism, and it's a good little organization as far as doing what it is. It's a proper museum. We've got insurance, we got cameras and stuff like that. The neat thing about this is it doesn't come out of general tax revenue. It comes out of the hotel side. So, there's a whole bunch of different, I don't want to speak for you guys, but obviously the other budget stuff is got a whole bunch of other constraints and considerations. But we can fit under this. And as soon as somebody comes into the visitor center, and we got lots of brochures, and we can get people in to visit, and it's a fun thing to do in the Wayne. And people generally really like it, right? And come in and learn a little bit. And the walking tours, because we don't have 5,000 square feet of space, like a giant museum at the airport, which may happen someday, but may not. People can get outside and look at the anchors that we put up over around the town, do a little walking tour, do some historical stuff, right? So it's also a gateway to go out and explore the community as well, right? Like working with the district on some signage, like I mentioned at Tonquin Park, used to be called Alfred's Beach. There used to be a settler up on the hill there. There was a molybdenum mining test shaft at the bottom of the path in the 70s. There was before the latest, there was a whole bunch of people that were Vietnam vets living in the bush up there, for the hippies from that era. So even Tonquin Park, when you walk down there, has a little bit of local history that we could have captured, right? And it's stuff like that, the old timers, local that we can also build, and it all works together. So
that's great. Thank you, Steve. And I can't see what staff members, and I might look to staff to see, would we need a motion to write a letter of support for that RMI funding request, or what would be the course of action for us here?
Yeah, I was just going to actually turn those questions over to staff. What would be required if we'd like to support their request?
Thank you through the chair to council and the community. So this is good timing. Staff are working on a new resort development strategy for 2025 to 2027. So this would be the time that the museum would typically come forward and request a funding agreement for 3 years. So I think the most appropriate thing to do is refer this request to staff to consider for the development of the strategy. I know my corporate officer, Mr. McCall, has prepared some language for council to consider if they're interested in doing so. And it gives council an option whether to refer it to the resort development strategy or the financial planning process, and we can sort of look at that for funding likely resort development strategy.
Okay.
Question for staff. The fact this is going up from 30,000 to 50,000, we have to provide an explanation for that.
Through the chair, so the resort development strategy has a look at many different projects, and services is one area that we look at. So what we will be doing is bringing forward the strategy as a whole for council, and if council would like staff to have a look at this request at $50,000, we can include that language in the motion, and we'll come back to council with the strategy.
Hey, I don't think there's any more questions. I'd like to congratulate everybody that's done all this work over the years. I've heard nothing but good reports of most recent developments at the museum. People are amazed at how well a small space tells stories. So, and I'm very supportive of all the outreach kind of things that are going to. Anyways, I feel like we would like to support this, so maybe should I put the motion together from the chair or ask for a committee member to move that?
Keegan has some draft language he can read out.
Okay.
Yep. If I may, thank you, Chair Anderson. Yeah, I've got some language here that the funding request of $50,000 from the Tofino Clayoquot Heritage Society be referred to staff to consider through the 2025 to 2027 resort development strategy or the financial planning process.
Okay, Councillor Swear.
So I think we have to decide if we want to go through the financial planning process or the resort development strategy. I prefer the resort development strategy myself, because I think it'll be part of the same conversation with the stream money.
Through the chair, that's fine to staff receive some information just before the meeting started, and I don't foresee any issues with the development strategy. Just a correction on the language though, that would be 50,000 per year for 3 years.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
If
how to have this motion when I don't have
if I may,
the wording we're going back and forth on.
yeah, if Mr. McCall wants to email it to me, I can read it off my screen.
Sure, I can
Unless you have a
repeat
printed copy.
I can repeat the motion if you'd like with the additional language.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
And then I'll ask the council member to move
That the funding request of $50,000 per year for the next 3 years from the Tofino Clayoquot Heritage Society be referred to staff to consider through the 2025 to 2027 resort development strategy.
Is that motion?
Okay, Councillor McMaster, is your seconder? Second. Sorry. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, and on the agenda to item 7.1, and we have an invited presentation from regarding 2025 economic impact of tourism in Tofino and resident perception. So
good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so I'm here today to present 2 pieces of research to council, which it'll be miraculous if I get through in the 15 minutes provided, so we'll just jump straight into it.
But I think it's an invited presentation. You're not limited to a time frame.
Don't tell me that.
Still, sorry, Chair Anderson, yes, still 15 minutes for anybody.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, let's see how we go.
All right.
Maybe there'll be we can see what we can do. Anyway, there are 2 pieces of research I wanted to present today to council and to the community. The first one is a resident perception study, and the second one is an economic impact study. So we're just going to jump straight into it. But needless to say, the Tourism Tofino is striving to be a data-driven organization. organization that provides useful insights for businesses and for planning as a community. So I'm going to start with the resident perception. Without going, I'm just going to fly over the methodology and just get into the results. I think it's really our best approach here, but I'm happy to take any questions at the end. Destination BC has been doing a resident research program for a number of years. It really blew up during the pandemic where they were trying to test residents' feelings about welcoming visitors back into the community, and it has taken off from there just to more look at just general resident sentiment about tourism in our community. The sample size in Tofino was never big enough to break Tofino out of that provincial study. So we started talking to them in 2023 about partnering together so that we could get some Tofino data out of this. And so that's what we did last fall. It's the first time we partner with Destination BC. So we used their survey instrument and we shared the results with them, which went into the full provincial report that you can download at that link there at Destination BC's website. This is something we're going to do annually moving forward so that we'll be able to measure trends in resident sentiment over time. And we deliberately do it after the peak summer season when it's still relatively fresh in people's minds. So we did it in November of last year. We issued out a survey of about 25 questions. 452 residents took the survey. 87% of those identified as living here in Tofino, but we also had representation from Massawa, Tyastana, Sapitsit, and Mark Cease House it. 35% of respondents lived here for more than 15 years, 40% for 5 years or less, and the rest are in the middle. We had about 15% identify as Indigenous and about 10% identifying as from the queer community here on the coast. I do not have the time today to go into the 25 questions, but you can go onto our website and you can look at them all. But I've just pulled out a few that I thought might be interesting to share. We asked the question of residents, do you agree with these statements? Tourism supports a greater diversity of amenities than would otherwise exist in our community. So here in Tofino, overwhelmingly, 82% of Tofino residents agree with that idea, compared to the provincial average of 76%. So folks, folks get that tourism is creating more amenities in the community. What folks are a little bit less out to lunch on compared to the provincial average is overall, I believe the positive impacts of tourism on our community outweigh the negative impacts. So the good news is that more than half of the community already feels like the positives of tourism outweigh the negatives. We had 20% that were on the fence. But you can see that Tofino residents are a lot less likely to agree with that statement than the provincial average. We have some theories that this is probably colored a lot by the current conversations around limits to growth and water and things like that. But we'll be able to see this over time. In the survey, we also ask a question around seasonality, which I thought was important to present here. So we ask, do you think Tofino has too few, too many, or just the right amount of tourism throughout the year? So blue being just the right amount. You can see that in the spring and the fall, we have about, give or take 2/3 of our residents think that their amount of visitation is just right in the spring or fall. Slightly less in winter, with more supporting that we have too few. But in summer, we have 75% of residents think that we have too much tourism in Tofino in the summertime. It's not a huge surprise, but it's good to have this stuff quantified and to be able to track it over time. So that is my super quick 5-minute blast through the resident survey, but I do encourage folks to go to, and I'm going to share the website again, but to the industry section of our website, we have the raw Tofino data as well as the provincial report that you can download. Probably the star of the show today is the economic impact of tourism in Tofino study that we've just wrapped up with Intervistas. We have done this exercise before in 2018. And I just wanted to maybe throw a word of caution out there that people are going to be tempted to compare backwards and forwards with the 2018 and the 2024 study. And even though it was the same firm that did it with the same sort of methodology, there were very different studies. 2018 was based on visitor surveys that only took place in the summer with a much smaller sample size, whereas the 2024 study, we surveyed over 3,000 visitors across the entire calendar so that we got a bit more of a fulsome picture of tourism writ large and not just in summer. So that means that, a summer tourist is obviously going to spend more money on doing activities like surfing and whale watching than a winter visitor would. So it's just some caution there in comparing them backwards and forwards. Well, let's just get straight into it. I'm not going to talk too much about methodology, but the economic impact study is very much similar to any other economic impact study you'd see. It's made up of three major parts. There's the direct economic impact, which is visitors spending their money at businesses while they're in Tofino. There's the indirect economic impact, which is all of the supply chain and the supporting businesses that support those transactions. And then there's the induced economic impact, which is people who are making wages in the tourism economy in Tofino spending that money here. And so collectively you take those three things and that's what gives you the economic impact. It was based on 3,000 visitor surveys and 350 business surveys. They put it through a whole bunch of stats can things and modeling and stuff. And we got to the results. And so this is the top, this is kind of the headline. And you were the first to have this presented to you. This is actually officially being released today in its final form. So you can download the full report from our website as of this morning. And here are the sort of top line numbers. We have 300 entities in Tofino providing accommodation to overnight visitors. Most of those are short-term rentals, but that's also bed and breakfast, campgrounds, RV parks, hostels, hotels, the full gamut of accommodation. So 300 entities providing the accommodation, providing 1,890 rental units, which is our best estimate is just over 2,500 bedrooms and campsites in Tofino. And that's important because they use that to model some of the rest of the information that you're going to see in the report. Here's the big number that everyone's going to be talking about. I did share this preliminary number when we were still doing the modeling with the district, and it did shift a little bit, but this is the final number. So we estimate that there were 711,200 visitors to Tofino in 2024. That's made up of about 79,000 day visitors and about 632,000 overnight visitors. So that does include a day visitor component. And then those visitors spent $430 million directly into Tofino when they were here. So that's the top line of the study. And then we start to really get into all of the nitty-gritty of the different types of impacts. So starting with this, these are the direct impacts. So tourism employs 3,190 people in Tofino. Yes, that's more than the 2,500 population, but we all know that's not the real population of Tofino. The accommodation, so everybody that works in the accommodation sector is included in this. The other two, we have to do a little bit of math around. So residents don't stay at hotels typically, but residents do eat in restaurants and residents do shop in retail as well. So we have to make some adjustments there just to capture the tourism and visitor related side of those industries. So there's directly 183 million in GDP, 131 million in wages, and 383 million in economic outputs. And that's the direct economic impact of tourism, in 2024. You can break those 3,190 jobs into the different subsectors. So no surprise that food and beverage and accommodations is the two largest employers in our industry. And you can see some of the other ones there. And then we get into the indirect and induced, which I sort of glazed over before. But so in total, there's the 3,190 direct jobs, but then there's the indirect and induced. So we have about 4,440 jobs that are connected to the tourism industry in Tofino. $211 million of wages, 345 million in GDP, and an economic output of $657 million a year. So for a tiny little town at the end of the peninsula, we are quite a powerhouse. And then that comes back to government, of course. And so it was estimated in 2024 that $108 million from tourism in Tofino went to various levels of government in 2024. For the federal government, that's 66 million, 61% of that. This is mostly attributable to taxes paid by employers and employees like income tax and CPP. Then you move to the provincial government, 36 million, which is, again, their portion of income tax, WorkSafe BC, medical premiums, and other provincial taxes. The 6 million in municipal is just the property taxes paid by businesses that operate in tourism and the MRDT. And so everybody in this room knows that there's probably more impacts than that 6 million. There's user charges, paid parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the implications at various levels of government. I'm actually not doing too bad. And then we move into some of the modeling around visitor volume, which is interesting. Again, I'm going to skip through the methodology here in the interest of time, and you can read this in the report, but where it actually lands is it models the actual volume of visitation in Tofino month by month across the calendar year. And so we can see here that at our peak in August, we have about 97,200 visitors in Tofino over the course of that month, compared to our quietest month of the year, which is January, where we had about 23,600 estimated visitors coming through across the month. So our visitation quadruples over the course of a year, which I think we all know intrinsically, but there it is on a screen. Obviously, the margin of error gets bigger the bigger the numbers get. This one's interesting as well. So if you take those 711,000 visitors, you can model where they stayed or what type of accommodation they stayed in. So more than half of people who come to Tofino are staying in a hotel, motel, resort, lodge, or inn. Another just shy of 13% stay in campgrounds, RV parks, about 11.5% in short-term rentals, and then about just over 11% of day visitors. Then we have folks staying from home, folks not paying to stay, hostels, bed and breakfast, second homes, and down from that. So again, these are just estimates, our best modeling that went into this project. And then we can also look at these in different ways. So we could look at daily visitor nights. So the number of nights that people are spending here, whether that's paid or non-paid across the calendar year. This looks a little bit different from the graph before because it takes into account trip length as well. So the average length of the trip. But there's lots of different things in terms of visitor volume, but I think those last two slides are really kind of the highlights there. Then we can actually move into the visitor profile and start to learn about some of the people that are coming to Tofino. So that's what the sample sizes looked like across 2023 and 2024. We did those 3,000 surveys. We were mostly interested in spring and fall, which is why you see a bit of a spike there. So of the surveys, 85% of folks who come here are from Canada. So it's kind of good news at the moment. And then the remaining 15% are sort of split almost equally between the US and then the rest of other international countries. We skew a little bit female. You can go into the report in terms of profiles around occupation and average income, but we skew a little higher more into the professional executive side of things with our visitors. The average party size at Tofino from the survey was 3.4 people, but the biggest group of people that come here is actually couples. Almost 1 in 2 parties are a couple, and half of those are with their spouse. So just some interesting things on the actual party composition. Purpose of travel, 90% of people come here to have a vacation. We don't really have a big meetings or convention thing like some other destinations. Length of stay is there. And then this one's a little bit different from the accommodation guide I just showed you, because this is the survey data, not the model data that you saw before. We have lots of repeat visitors. Over 2/3 of people who were surveyed last year for this project had been to Tofino before. And of those people that have been before, half of them come multiple times a year, or at least every year. So we are a very well-loved destination with lots of repeat visitation, which is great. That's kind of what folks got up to when they were here. Everybody went to the beach and everybody ate. Not a huge surprise, but there's some other interesting bits and pieces you can pull out of there. And then if I can get through this last bit in 30 seconds, we can talk about our Net Promoter Score, which was pretty wild. Net Promoter Score is how likely you'd be to recommend this destination to a friend. Very high satisfaction, very high Net Promoter Score. So people really enjoy their time here. Visitor spend broken down by day visitors, overnight visitors, and then all visitors average. So no surprise that folks are spending a lot of their money on staying here, and then next food, and then next activities, and then next shopping. So there's all of that information in the report as well. And I actually did it in 15 minutes. It's unbelievable. But I would strongly encourage folks to go to tourismtofino.com/industry/resources. You can download all of this stuff. It's live right now. And if you have any questions, you can always email me. And I will stop it there. Thank you so much.
Good job. You have 15 seconds left.
My first rodeo.
I feel like the wind of data just blew.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to sit with it for a bit, but you know where to find me if you have questions. But
think we'll open it up for a few questions. Councillor Sawyer.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question regarding the 3,190 jobs, which does exceed our population. Is that counting the fact that multiple people have multiple jobs?
It is,
There's-
yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah.
unique jobs and it's also full-time, part-time and casual. So seasonal jobs are included.
Okay, so it could count for that person who's working that one job for Staffcom in the summer and one day a week somewhere else and one day a week somewhere else.
Yeah. Same with the visitors for that matter, though. Those are unique visitors. So, because visitors could come multiple times a year. That's a great question.
Yeah, looking at visitation, I mean, for years, I've been hearing from Closing Tofino and the Chamber about broadening the shoulder season.
Mhm.
Yet looking at the residents' responses, they're quite happy with visitation as it is.
Mhm.
So how do you reconcile the demands of the business community and the demands of the residents, and what is sort of the optimum visitation in the shoulder season?
Describing my whole job. Yeah, it's trying to strike that balance, you know, and again, we're talking about perception and reality too, so, you know, like, but there's all kinds of different ways to look at how busy we are in the summer and what our capacity is. But for me personally, the best measure is what the residents think. So if the residents are feeling like we're too busy, then there's an issue there. You know, I'm not suggesting we shut hotels down or anything like that, but you know, if the residents are feeling that way, there's more work to do in terms of seasonality, and we know that, right? Like winters have been getting quieter. We have seen an increase in spring and fall over time for sure. Like we've been able to spread out the peak a little bit. But yeah, still have a huge seasonality issue, no doubt about it.
Councillor Steer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate the report once again. And I think just maybe to build a bit on Councillor McMaster's, one of the, we're talking about potential growth areas and certainly in that seasonality end of the equation. And I'm wondering, and I know it's not captured in the work that was there, but I'm wondering if you have some insight into potential growth areas. And I think specifically when we want to have the equity of our tourism economy across our communities and members around there. And I think of Indigenous tourism, and I'm wondering if you see that as a growth area for our region and our area. And I'm wondering if you do have any indicators in the survey work that was done, if that is a potential area that we can see growth in.
Yeah, thank you through the chair for the question. 100% yes, and there's a lot of work we've been doing on the Tofino Destination Stewardship Plan, and we'll be back in here tomorrow afternoon to talk about that project. But this isn't the only research we've been doing by any stretch. We did do a business survey in January that we typically don't publish the entire results, but in that survey this year, we did ask around what the business community thought were the potential growth areas for tourism. And the number one thing identified was Indigenous and cultural tourism in that survey. I mean, it's no surprise to anyone in this room if you've been paying attention what Tourism Tofino is up to. We strongly believe that as well. And there's actually quite a bit of research that's been published by the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, really actually quantifying that demand in the market. And so, you know, there's a lot of research to suggest that if we can position ourselves, you know, with the nations, obviously, as a leader in that space, that's gonna be huge in terms of unlocking some of that seasonality. People will travel for those authentic, rich cultural experiences, even if it's raining sideways.
Thanks, Brad. I do appreciate that. And I just one quick comment. The one stat that did come up that I was pleasantly surprised to see is that 98% visitor satisfaction when I did the quick math there. That's something to be really proud of. And I think that's a credit to our tourism industry here on the West Coast and the work that is done with Tourism Tofino in the promotion of that stewardship concept. So I just really wanted to point that out. And I think it's a great stat that we can build on.
Yeah, and just following on that, I made some caution about comparing the 2018 study to the 2024. I think you can compare Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score was 46 in 2018, and it's 77 in 2024. So the visitors are having a much better experience. Yeah.
Questions, Councillor Sloan? You mentioned something about, would this be done every year or how often?
Good question. So the resident survey will happen every fall, like annually, and so we'll be able to see over time if people think residents think it's getting too busy or it's getting better. This is a lot of work. I think the cadence, I mean, I'm not gonna leave it, but it's been like 7 years, I'm not gonna leave it that long. I think this is every 2 or 3 year kind of project.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of good information and as we delve into it, there may be other questions that people have. But, where might we ask those? Yeah.
Just shoot me an email, brad@tofino.com in the short term that I'm going to be having lots of FaceTime with council over the next little bit as well for the stewardship plan. So I think there's going to be plenty of touch points, but you can invite me back whenever you want. Happy to come and talk about it.
One last one, the methodology used on this, would it be similar to, if you looked at other municipalities that did a same kind of a snapshot of theirs, would you end up being comparable to?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty tried and true, like economic impact studies have been happening for decades. I know like Greater Victoria just did one at DMO, which seems to be pretty similar methodology. Usually based on visitor surveys of the businesses and taking publicly available things like retail occupancy and stuff on stats can. People that are much smarter than me go into a room and crunch the numbers and it comes out. But the methodology is really beautifully outlined in the report. If you're a huge data nerd and want to get into the weeds of it, it's all there.
Great. Yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, I guess we'll let you go.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will now move to question period. If there's anybody signed up with questions.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I will now do an open call for questions to both members present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function on Zoom. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do a call. Calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. No current questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to our last item, and that would be the closed session. So I'm now going to move from the chair. The motion that will take us there to our closed session. So I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91K of the community charter to discuss matters relating to negotiations and related discussions respecting proposed provision of a municipal service that are in their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. For a second, Councillor Sloman. All in favor? Motion is carried. And we'll now take maybe a 3-minute recess. It's the bathroom is closer.
Mayor Law, just doing a little quick sound check.
Might have to. Right. Thank you. The only thing is, I actually put a draft meeting.
I can hear everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you, Mayor Law. We've just recessed.
My only
as
concern
we
is
go into close, so a few more minutes here and then
I don't
we'll.
want to public. I don't think we should consult it, have someone want to speak up.
Okay, I'll mute the mics again.
Just
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you, Mayor Law.
just a quick question for you, Keegan.
Yeah.
I'm at the airport on the airport Wi-Fi.